right, welcome back, viewers and listeners. Welcome back, Nabil. We had a long break. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Good. I feel very artsy, and I'm just, surrounding myself with artful, art. See, art. Art,
Yeah, I see
art.
you're sitting in a very arty.
But so I'm wondering, what's the topic today, by the way?
Oh, coincidentally, the topic today is art. Like, what a coincidence. I know, right? So
What?
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Do you own any NFTs?
No.
Because we all know
Why?
NFT is the peak of art.
I wish. I wish. I don't know, man.
Oh, okay,
I don't want
okay.
to hype.
Okay. I
Peak of
mean,
art. Yeah.
seriously, are you an art person?
I'm an art person. Okay. Naturally, I'm not.
Okay.
Naturally, I'm not. But I've met some people. I met this group of friends who are so into art,
Mm-hmm.
and they show me this world of art, and it's so. I've never seen art that way. Usually, I'm quite judgmental, right? But then after exposing myself to those people, those
Mm-hmm.
friends, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's how like you would go to a wall, right? It has all these like abstract painting, right? And you can a cynical way to say it, and this is what I've been looking at it as is I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my god, this just a kid can do that art, a
Yeah,
kid
yeah.
can do that piece of art. But it's the way they say it, the way they see it is like, what do you feel when you see it? What is your interpretation
Mhm.
of it? What do you think it means? So for me, I'm a person who's like, okay, everything has a purpose. If a door is like the shape of the door is like a circle, it means that it has to be comfortable, right? There has to be
Mhm.
purpose for everything. What's the purpose of that? And it's like this world of being comfortable with ambiguity, right? You just
Okay.
see a piece of like splash of whatever, right? And you're just like, oh
Mhm.
wow, interesting, right? And I'm like, at first I'm like, what does that mean? But now I'm starting to see like, okay, maybe there's a meaning behind it. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong, even if it's not what the artist depicts.
Mhm.
In the end, your interpretation is your interpretation. It reflects something in you. It reflects something in you. So that's
Okay, okay.
something from art that I'm still
Yeah, I
trying
think
to
that's an
learn.
interesting perspective, and that's generally one that's very prevalent in the art world. Like you were talking, that art is something that that's like maybe different to different people, and everybody relates to it and understands it in a different way. And I mean, I would love to talk about what makes art. Why do we, qualify art as art and beauty as beauty? But I think what's really important is that before I discuss, like, if even if we discuss like what makes good art good, or we can discuss what makes beautiful things beautiful. But I think what's more intriguing for me, at least today, is that I want to discuss the value of art in society, right? So like you're saying that you come across some painting or something. Like, okay, first off, this is my outlook on, let's say, paintings. I'm just generalizing it to a very specific category of art. So people, they often are like, oh, this abstract painting, that was actually, the joke around. They're like, it's actually, just some paint fell down and it, it made itself. So, and usually the way I see it, and that's a very, let's just say, that's a very quantitative way to see it. That's what rationalization means. You quantify things. So one way to see that is that what otherwise looks like a mess of colors, when you actually examine it under the criterias for art. So we have the color theory, we have the ratio theory, we have the ambiguity theory, we have the nature theory, we have the what was that theory called, once again, I think Tragotin theory. So we have all these theories, and what the artist might be creating without actually following those rules. For example, for shapes, naturally occurring shapes, we have the irregularity theory, we have the golden ratio theory. So the artist might just be following its intuition, but in reality, unknowingly, he is fulfilling all the principles of art. So I think that's one way to, quantify art, that, these paintings that you see that maybe or maybe you do not understand, in reality, they are actually following some principles. And I think the same goes for nature. So you look at mountains and sunrise and everything, and you're like, it's so beautiful. And well, the reason is that at the back end, the golden ratio, the ambiguity, all these different theories are actually working. So like that's my outlook on what I think is art. But I think that, that leaves a question as what qualifies as art. Because if you tell this definition, and I've tried this, if you tell this definition to an artist, that art is only something that follows certain rules, they will be so angry. Because, artistic people, they want to follow their inner artist. So, that really brings the question as what qualifies as art. And I want to mention some bizarre arts that we have seen over time. Do you remember the banana tape to the wall?
Yeah, yeah.
Or do you say that's art?
Actually, I would say that's art.
Okay.
I would say that's art. You know why? Because I mean, art, you can say art, there's an area where there's no right or wrong, and maybe that's one of them. That's one of them where it's like, actually, it's not really wrong. And it's an art because maybe, like the people looking at it, something resonates. They look at that, and it's something resonate within them. Maybe it's like, maybe I'm banana strapped to a wall, or maybe I'm maybe I'm yellow, but I am oppressed. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's racial stereotypes. I don't know.
Okay.
But something about it, I was saying, maybe something about it is like resonating with people, and they're like, okay, that they see it as art, and
Okay.
it can have a meta, you can analyze it in a meta sense, in a way that it is like, the story itself is an art, where it's comedic, it's dramatic, it's exaggeration, it's a dramatical story. I don't know. Maybe life itself is art, like who knows? Who knows where? What is not art? Let's say what is not art, right?
I mean, what about I don't know if you have heard of this, but there was this invisible figure. Have you heard of this? So one artist
Invisible figure.
Yeah, he just marked a square, and he was like, in this square stands a beautiful monument, but it's invisible. And he sold it for a lot of money. What do you say that's art? I mean, that's art of selling. That is art.
Art or selling, the art of the deal, right? Maybe he's best friends with Trump, right? Art of the deal. But is it art? Dude, as long as someone looks at it, right? And they're like, oh, maybe,
dude, there's barely anything
supposed to be here. Yeah, but maybe it's like, inside I feel so empty. Like this empty box, okay, it's art. You can express emptiness in an empty, something. You can express it in a song, right? You can express it in minimalistic shirt. Why not express it in something else, and something that's unique, that captures people's attention? Why not?
You know what I'm thinking? Like, we're just trying to understand art in a very light-hearted manner. But if you look from our outside perspective, it just looks like we're shitting on artists.
Yeah. I know, but
that is not the case. Respect art.
There's a YouTube video of I think it's by Vox, and Vox always makes all these like interesting documentaries, right? Interesting videos. And one of the videos is this: why is this painting so expensive? And the painting is just white paint on canvas, right? And then there's this art museum director or something, I don't know. This is the person that selects which art is good, right? And she's like, yeah, like it's white, but it's not just white. There's different shades of white, like there's warm white, there's cool white, all this stuff, right? And then she's like, in the end, she's like, yeah, sure. One of the arguments is you could have made it, but you didn't made it. Someone else made it. Maybe there's intention behind it.
Mm.
But I scroll down to the comments and people are still like, okay, whatever. It's still, like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
yeah.
true. It's true. It's true. So I think the question to that is if even a simple painting of white can be art, what
Mhm.
is not art? Let's put it that way first. What is not
Okay.
art? What is not art? What do you think is not art, Salman?
What do I think is not art? I would
Right,
say
right.
there's actually a very interesting theory in psychology that for anything to qualify as, I mean, they do not strictly say art, but they say, I mean, it has to do a lot with copyright laws and, that kind of stuff. Let's say photography. So for anything to be legally your creative work, there must be intention. So if you accidentally press your mobile, and some random photo is taken, but that photo turns out to be really cool, that technically cannot qualify as creative work, or at least that's not your creative work because there was no intention behind it. So I think maybe intention. I think because like we were talking about artists' intuition, So I think something about, I think that the concept of art and artist is something that cannot be separated, right? So like, you cannot talk about Mona Lisa without talking about Leonardo da Vinci. So maybe something along the lines of what was the intention of, I mean, one concept that prevails the art world, I know, is that what you have mentioned, that art is something that conveys some sort of feeling. So maybe anything that does not convey any sort of feeling, something stale, that is not art. But I think the other concept that maybe it's an artist's expression of emotion, that's like the more definitive way of art. So maybe that's my understanding of what is art and what is not art.
Would you say a picture of a sunset is art?
I would say it's art, but I mean, are you talking about the sunset itself, or are you talking about the way, the camera exposure is set or the angle is set? So there are two arts here. One is the sunset itself, and one is the photo itself. So it's like art within art. It's artception. That's what I understand.
I don't know. It's like we put Bruneians love this. We put sunsets as our profile pictures because there's so many beautiful sunsets in Brunei. We
Mhm.
take a picture of that because it looks so beautiful, and we post it online, and people go like, "Wow, a lot of likes!" All right, because one of the things about art, I mean, good art is that people appreciate it and people give it a lot of likes.
Yeah.
So is that art? If a photo is art, then is a photo, for example, last year there was a riot in the US Capitol, right?
Mhm.
Someone took a photo of that. Is that art? Right? And if it is art, does it matter which allegiance the photographer is in, whether he's on the
Mhm.
right or whether he's on the left?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. Does that matter? Does that matter? There's an interesting thing about this. There's a South Park episode, and what I love about South Park is that they're mostly satire, but sometimes
And
they hit topics
no
that are
good
like.
story starts with South Park. No good story starts with there is a South Park episode.
But listen to this. Listen to
Yeah,
this.
go
Right?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. This might be your very first interesting South Park story.
Okay.
So what happened was, I think Kenny or uh, I think Kenny, one of the characters, he was writing a book. He was writing a
Okay.
book, and he's okay. I'm gonna work so hard on this book, and I'm gonna make the most beautiful book. And I think he couldn't make the book, so he copied someone else writing, and people are like, "Oh wow, this is famous! Wow!" And now people are gathering in front of his house. Like, oh, this famous like J.K. Rowling level of author. Like, oh, he's so famous. All right, what are you gonna do next? Are you gonna do a sequel? And they're like, oh crap, I didn't make the book. Okay, now I have to make the second book. People are freaking out, like, okay, what should I do? What should I do? Okay, fine. You know what? Let's just spoil everyone. I'm gonna make the shittiest book I can make, right? I'm gonna take a piece of paper, write down crap, absolute crap, right? And they were like, okay, everyone's gonna know, right? So he wrote the book, and we're like, okay, guys, here it is, all right. And then people are like, oh my god, this is so profound. I'm crying.
Yeah.
right? And we're like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. This surpasses the first book. And Kenny was like, what the heck? What? You're not supposed to like it. It's literally crap. People were like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. So it's like they did not intend it to be good.
Mhm.
But people are like, oh wow, this is art. Is it still art? So is it is it still
like
art?
you did the story did make a very good recovery with the follow up, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, usually it's the opposite. If you There's a good chance, and I think there might be some rationality behind it, that I'm do not quote me on this, but there's a good chance that if you take a very well profound story, maybe from some Shakespearean book or something, from some really good artist, and then show it to some, just walk into a university and show it. And I think the people have done this. I don't know how true this is. I read it off social media that somebody copied it off from some really high level work, and the teacher graded it C. And like he's literally copying Shakespeare, but the teacher graded it like C. So like the idea was like something also about not everyone understands art, but that's why I said
Mm.
that you cannot separate the concept of art and artist. So something about, oh, if this is coming from this person, this is art. So anything he
Mm.
speaks, anything he does is art.
So about someone copying Shakespeare and putting it on a paper that the teacher graded and the teacher got him a C. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not just the words. Maybe it's how it should be interpreted. It's also like when I talk about the South Park story, when
Mhm.
when this book is given to them, they're like, oh no, it's I don't understand it. So it has to have a deeper meaning. So it's like confirmative
Okay.
bias, right? It has to be good. It has to be good. Maybe that line from Shakespeare, they know that it was from Shakespeare. They just can't understand it. So when they read it, they can't understand it. But it has to be good. It has to be profound. I don't know. If we were
I
to
mean,
put it
I
scientifically,
would, I think, this is maybe just my personal, but from what I know about psychological literature, I would, beg to differ that just because people do not understand something, usually this is what the prevalent idea in psychology is. People hate what they don't understand. So either they turn towards, they look at towards as some monstrosity, as something to be afraid of, or as something to hate. So I think the phenomena that even though you do not understand it, but you respect it, is it's mostly, some kind of collective placebo, and it connects back to the point that you are taught that, okay, this guy is, the best person in this field or something. So it connects back to that point that just because it's from Shakespeare, you're going to value it, but the same content, you remove the name, you're going to be like, oh, this is not that good. So I think something about the idea that you cannot separate art and artist, or more like art and its
mm,
content, like context, sorry, that where is it coming from, who is the person saying it, who's the person drawing it. So like, for example, uh, the Beethoven's symphonies, maybe you listen to them, you're like, oh, they're nice, but then you go in detail about all the tragedies that he went through, and that one of those, I think fifth or sixth symphony, it was a revenge symphony, and he had just had a heartbreak, and his teacher was against him, and that's why there is so much passion in that symphony. So when you know the context, suddenly art makes much more sense. It's like you're listening to a song and
yes,
you're like, oh, that's good, but one day you understand the lyrics, and you're like, oh, so
yes,
maybe something about the context also.
yes. I agree with you, especially with the song, right? You like a song, you're like, oh yeah, that's great, right? And then I hear something like Billie Eilish, right? And like, I had a dream, I got everything. Okay, I first I'm thinking, oh, okay, that is quite sad. Then I actually listen to the lyrics. I'm like, oh wow, it's suicidal sad. I'm like, oh, 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 oh. Another one is more directly linked to art. I was watching this YouTube video of a piano. I think it's Rossiao or Patrick Peachman or something. Yeah, I was learning piano, and this guy was playing a piano piece that was written by an 18-year-old. I think it was like in the earlier music centuries or something, right? So the music started off with dun, 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 like suspense, right? And then suddenly it's like panic, like dun, 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 dun. I'm like, okay, that's creepy, right? And then I looked at the description, and the description is apparently the person who composed it, he was sleeping and he was dreaming that he was attending a funeral. And then somewhere along the way, he looked within the coffin, and then the coffin was himself. So that's when
Oh,
the music
okay.
became dramatic. And I'm like, yeah. So it's like, dun, 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 dun. I mean, I'm doing a bad interpretation of the
Do you
song.
want me to edit in
But
the actual piano sounds here from that track?
yeah, you can. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, will do.
Just a hint, the piano part. This is sidetracking, but the piano part is so hard, right? Right. Every chord, you have to cross your hands like this. Dun, dun, like you
Yeah,
have to
okay,
like
okay,
go
okay.
back and forth like this. And the
You
comment
know, this
section are like,
this
finally,
this
after
reminds me.
yeah.
This reminds me, and I mean, it's a little bit stale in front of your story about the funeral and the person being itself. It's a little bit stale, but and I think that was what I was mentioning to about the whole context of Beethoven. So the very famous For Alice by Beethoven, the most famous For Alice. So the For Alice has a very weird pattern. It starts off very easy, it's very easy, C, D, C, A, E. It starts off very easy. But then suddenly, it gets exponentially very difficult. So you're like, okay, it's, just the song has gotten, some beat to it. But the context is that Beethoven was in love with somebody, and that girl, she was not very good at music, at piano. So he wrote a very easy symphony for her, but then she betrayed her. So then he composed the more difficult part, which he assumed, like with the intention that it's going to be impossible for her to play. So like it's a bit of a revenge drama story here.
Wow.
So when you know the
Wow,
context,
I didn't know this. Wow.
yeah, and now next time you hear For Alice and the part gets intense, you're like, that's what you get for betraying. It's something about
Wow.
knowing the
Yeah,
context
yeah,
of
yeah.
art immediately increases its, and while we are at the subject of tragic arts, I want to add this. Okay, I think you have an interesting story. Go ahead.
Here's not an interesting story. Not an interesting story. Maybe it's a sidetrack. Maybe it's a topic that you want to delve in.
Mm-hmm,
But people's faces, models.
mm-hmm.
You have people where sometimes you look at their faces and you can't help but be mesmerized by their beauty.
True,
Right?
true.
Is that art?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
is
I
that?
would say, and religious theologians, doctrinal theologians might agree that there's a phrase, and it's used rather loosely between a metaphor and reality. But the phrase is that human being is the highest form of art of the universe or God. So like, you can talk about the outer, the appearance, the face, but let's say the biological details and the depth and everything, and how everything is in a perfect harmony and balance, and there is symmetry, there is asymmetry, there is layering, there is, the human being is just one of the most perfect forms of art created by God, or created by universe, if you will. But I think, I would say that yes, people are art. Why not?
Oh. How about
And
how about how about planets? How about planets? So it's art. Okay, so I see, because of the religious perspective, right? You have intention behind it, right? It's designed with intention to look beautiful by a higher being, right?
mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
I think that's very interesting. Why, like, we see art everywhere. We see art in nature, but the question is, what if, for example, right, when we look at movies,
Mhm.
maybe this topic is a bit too diverting, but if we look at movies and they want to contrast between art and non-art, we've seen this.
Okay.
We've seen, like, before the guy walks out of the door, and like opens the door, and like confetti flies out, and he's wearing high fashion, and he's like, wow, I'm wearing Louis Vuitton, I'm an artist, right? Before he goes there, before he's changed a man, he's showing him on the laptop, right? Like, and then in a cubicle box, in a gray
Okay.
box. It's always gray, right? It's always gray, and they're always wearing like
Yeah.
tired, and there's always like photocopy machine and a phone call in the background.
Yeah.
And they're always doing the same thing, and there's always papers unorganized, and there's always a lady
And they
walking
look at a
in
girl in
saying,
distance that
"Oh,"
they can never get.
next to the window, and the girl always is dressed prettily, like
Yeah, like
the
way
world
above
around
their
them is
league.
so gray. And like how Spider-Man just looks out of his window and he's like, oh, there's the girl, like a stalker. I don't know, but it's
Okay,
like
okay.
it's like there's this idea of, what is that? Is that non-art? Like they're in this
I mean,
gray, boring walls. I don't know.
I mean that is I think that is a very precise form of art. So I mean, I spent some time in cinematography, and the color profiling theory in cinematography is very prevalent. So exactly what you are describing is taught to cinematograph students, right? That to represent that somebody is in a state of depression, the colors will be dull, the clothing they will be wearing will be dark, and so colors and generally lightning and everything, it plays a role in, I think it all comes back to uh, conveying a feeling. So you can dress up or show the environment in a certain way, or add even music, some kind of emotions, just to stir up certain emotions in the people. There was a very interesting I mean, it's not like a social experiment, but just people do on TikTok and stuff. But it was very interesting. I mean, that's just maybe the eye of a philosopher over analyzing. But what the thing was, um, there was a dog, there was a puppy, and it does something, and it gets, I think it gets scared or something. It does something, and it gets scared or it gets hurt. So the same video with a funny laugh track with like boing sounds when the puppy does something, and with like laughter laugh track, people laugh like, ah, so cute. But you put a sad tune to it, you slow mo it, put black and white, and you see the puppy being scared. Everyone's like, oh my god, animal cruelty, hashtag PETA. So something about colors, visuals, all our senses, sound, smell, everything, it all comes back to art being used to convey a feeling. And there's actually, okay, I want to give you this bizarre example to just completely diversify this bizarre art topic for once. Tell me if this is art or not. I think somewhere in Denmark, I'm forgetting who was the guy, but some artist inverted commas, he took three blenders, mixers, blenders, blade
Mm,
and juicer mixers, and he put some water in
okay.
it and put some goldfish in it. Okay, stay with me, bear with me. Three blenders, in each there's a
Okay.
goldfish, right?
Okay.
And then he leaves it, no supervision or anything, and he says this is the highest form of art. Now you have the option, they are connected, you have the option to just walk and turn the switch on, and you'll have a, I don't know, goldfish smoothie or something, I'm sorry. But the fish will die. Yes, so he leaves it. So people think, oh yeah, it's one of those ridiculous things that you don't expect anybody to actually do. But then one person walks, and there's always that one guy, so he walks and he turns on the switch, and the fish dies. So it happened, and then there was an aftermath and everything, but the question remains, was that art? Was that entire setup, that entire piece of goldfishes and blenders, and then letting people in on it, was that art?
Right. Okay, I'm looking at the picture now, and if you allow me to share my screen, I can share it with
I think you
the audience. I'm
do
looking
it,
at the
do it.
screen. I'm like, oh wow, that's what he actually did this for real. This is absolutely ridiculous. They actually put a blender. with goldfish in. Oh my god, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think you can share
So
the screen. Are you sure you want to show this to the audience?
I mean, look. So it's I assume it's that one, right? I assume it's that
Yeah, yeah,
one. I mean, I'm not sure if
yeah.
you can.
Marco Everest.
I'm not sure if you can find it with uh, the dead goldfish. But anyways, we're used to seeing dead fish anyway, so we won't
No,
mind
I
finding
mean,
dead fish.
for the people who are listening, we're basically just googling images of fishes in blenders. That's as far as we can get. So
That's as far as we can get.
that's as
But
far
is
as
it
we
art?
should get. Is it art? Yeah.
You know what? You know what? I think it's art. Here's what I think art is, right? It's you want to communicate emotion, or or maybe it's this. All life is art. The moment you open your eyes, the moment you can see what's around the world, everything can be interpreted as art. There's no right or wrong, whatever the intention of someone is, right? If you're from South Park and I open a book and it's like, if someone right now, you take out a book from one of the many books that you have in your bookshelf, you open it up and you go to the toilet and you just crap on the book, right? So there's a and you give it to me, Nabil, this is the best artist book that I can get. I'm like, but someone, why is it smelly? You're like, yeah, I know, it's just artsy smell. And I open it and it's just like crap, right? But I'm just like, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe the interpretation is, most books, they look good on the outside, but inside it's just crap. Oh wow, this is profound. Thank you, someone, right?
I don't know
But your
which
intention was
example was
just to
more
throw.
bizarre. I don't know which example was more bizarre, the blenders and the fish or this book and shit. I don't know which one was more bizarre.
Oh wow, so profound, Salman. Thank you so much. This is so profound. Thank you so much for this lesson. Right. Is that art? I think it's still art. I think it's still art. I think art is uh we perceive, how do we perceive the world? We're navigating this world where it's complicated. It's full of fake news, or we don't know what's real and what's not. Maybe everyone is full of lizards, and we have to navigate not just the outside world, but most importantly the inside world ourselves. We have to navigate our emotions. When are we sleepy? When are we like this? Why do I feel this way? I don't choose my feelings. What should I do with my parents, with my friends, whatever, right? So many complications. And in all that, we try to find meaning. We try to find meaning. And how do we find meaning? We find meaning in a lot of ways. Scrolling down on Instagram, finding that one quote that resonates with us, finding that picture that resonates with us. And it can just be someone walking by a street and you're like, oh, that's a signal for me to do something. Maybe you want to buy Mercedes, but you're not sure. Then one day someone trips in front of you, and he took out his car keys. He tripped his car keys, and it was a Mercedes, and you're like, oh, maybe this is a sign for me to buy a Mercedes. We depend, we look for signs and symbols in life, even if there's no symbols at all. So I think art is just,
I think to complete that picture,
yeah.
I think to complete that picture, there is one buffer layer in between. So I think it's a little bit difficult, at least for me, to wrap my head around. And some people might be able to do that, but art exactly jumping into providing a meaning of life, I think that's there is a buffer layer in between, which is emotions. So it's like, you're like the example you gave, that you want the car, you want a Mercedes, and your emotions and your desire that exists. What art does is that it pushes those emotions, and then it leads to the action that you want to create. And that is, I think, actually one of the I would not say prevalent, because of how scattered the literature is on this work. So this is called philosophy of aesthetics, right? But there's so much scatteredness in this, and a lot of ideas are borrowed from so many different overlapping subjects of philosophy, that it's difficult to pinpoint. There are no philosophers of aesthetics specifically. It's a very overlapping subsubject. But one of the scholars of, not necessarily of the field, I think, I don't remember if he was a psychologist or if he was a sociologist, but I think his name was Robin Collingwood, and he presents this theory very, let's say, with a lot of persuasion, that art can be defined in two broad categories. So I cannot recall the terms that he uses for arts, but there are two broad categories. One
Mm.
is that urges you to do something in society. So like there's art that, you look at a movie, and the movie is like, some, I don't know, some guy mistreats his wife, but then his wife finds a better guy. So then this art pushes an emotion in you that motivates you to do something better in your life, that, oh, I should treat my wife better. So that's one, as to say, example of how art works, that it motivates you in real life. And he categorizes one of the, let's say, not categorizing art, let's say one of the reasons of art, and one of the effects of art as this, that it motivates you to do something in life. It reflects somehow. And I want to discuss the
Mm.
more entomological
Mm.
reasons of why art reflects life, and I think that's a very deep concept. But the other idea that Collingwood introduces, other than art motivates you to do something in life, the other idea is, and this is, I think, something teenage people would love: art is an escape of reality, is an escape from reality, basically. So there is one idea which is like, how can I see this movie, and now I take away a message, and how can I imply it in my daily life? So that's, encouraging somebody to do something better in reality. That's one type of art. I forgot there are technical terms for these two types of arts. But the other type of art is that is just an escape from reality. So you see that in fiction, in stories, in novels, in extremely fictional worlds. So why do people, I don't know how true this is, but I've always heard about teenage kids running away from houses, finding a corner and reading Harry Potter or something. So I think, I don't know if it's just a dramatization or if that's true. Maybe it is, people love.
Definitely true.
Yeah, and there's
Definitely
nothing wrong
true.
with that, There's, but you should also read my novels, stofficials.com. But
Shut up. Shut up.
okay,
You know,
enough.
I know, you know, I know someone, just to support your point, I know someone who is so in love with Harry Potter,
Mhm.
right? And she has a picture of Harry Potter. She will look at Harry Potter's picture and be like, oh, wow, I have a crush on Harry Potter. And the parents don't have to worry about her getting a boyfriend because she'll be stuck reading Harry Potter books. So, it's true. I think it's true. I think it's true.
Yeah, but most of these people, and I'm not targeting your friend, but most of these people, when you actually analyze them, they need some help. So in other words, this is a very common scenario in, I'm not trying to play on it, but it's a very common scenario. You see that in movies. There is a kid, and he's weak, and everybody bullies him, but then he goes in a corner and reads his book. So it's an escape from reality for him.
Yeah,
So I think these are the two
exactly.
primary functions that art functions as. It's either an encouragement of how you can do better in life, or an escape from reality. And I think most of
I
the
think
modern
actually
day
that's
art lies in the escape from reality part.
Actually, I like that definition. The reason why we try to put definitions on things, right, is that we want to categorize it and we want to, understand it in a better way, right? Some definitions are good, some definitions are bad, but there's like I think maybe
Mhm,
in terms of art, there's no specific definition, but I think
mhm.
that's a good definition, right? Something that motivates you to do something, or something that puts you in a state where you want to escape reality, or you can just watch the latest Matrix movie or whatever latest Matrix, and you're like, you'll be motivated to escape from reality. That's two in one art right there. Even though, I mean, spoiler alert, I don't like the movie. If you want to have a nostalgia of Matrix 1, 2, and 3, don't watch the fourth one. The studio is just trying to squeeze money from you. Anyways, going
That's
back to
literally
art,
the
it's
prologue
like
of the movie itself, you know. You know, they say that in the
exactly,
prologue.
exactly,
Spoilers
exactly.
alert. I mean, I'm not a fan either, but anyways, coming back to the topic, yeah. So this idea, you know, these two definitions. So this artist, you know, the one who blended the fishes. I mean, he didn't do it. He just allowed the means, and you know, it opens up a whole world of conversation about the boundaries between art and morality. But I'll be honest with you, that's a subject that I do not want to segue into because I will have to discuss morality innately first. So you know that's a different episode about morality. But
Mm,
so when this artist was asked, why did you do such a cruel, you know, experiment, you know, art in name of art, and he said the same. You know, the primary function of art is to motivate you to do things that you already want to do. So that those emotions are already inside you, but art just pushes them. And he says that if somebody walked up and actually pressed the blender, I did not you know force him to do that. He was already a sadistic person. I merely proved it to the world. So he was like, you know, I was able to, you know, demonstrate the hidden tendencies and emotions of people, and that's what art does. It just pushes them further, so they are more visible to the world. And I think, you know,
that,
that's a
that
very accurate understanding of how art usually works.
that's so interesting, right? If you put art in a definition where one is trying to motivate someone to do something and the second one is to escape reality, we've seen more art in terms of escaping reality, right? For
True,
example,
true.
Harry Potter escaping reality, Hunger Games escaping reality, Star
Lord of the
Wars, Star
Rings.
Trek, on all Lord of the Rings, Pokemon, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Donkey, I don't know, anything. But we don't see
Yeah, I
much
get your
about
point.
art that motivates someone to do something, right? Okay,
Mhm.
now I'm looking at the picture. I'm like, okay, that's a very interesting point. Again, going back to the morality, right? If we talk about morality, sure, we can talk about it for hours because okay, I mean, first of all,
Yeah, it
this one is
segues.
a fish. People kill fishes every day, and like, what if? I mean, this is an extreme example, yeah. What if um my art, okay? What if my art is I line the entire wall with 10 school children, and in front of them are like bullets, right? Real bullets. And people just walk by. Oh, this is so sadistic, right? And
The
people
trolley
just walk by
problem.
and they can choose.
The trolley
Not
problem
really the trolley problem.
reimagined.
Not trolley problem. It's just that if someone comes in and shoots the kids, will the guy say no? I'm just proving the point. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know. I
mean,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. But you know
It's just
what I'm really interested in, and I think, you know, this will help us converse the topic more, because obviously it segues into a lot of topics that correlate to morality, and I want to discuss morality in a separate episode. So what I'm really interested here is that, so we understand escape from reality. That's pretty straightforward, right? And on the other hand, we understand the push in reality. So these are the two ideas that we understand. The question is, why is art able to relate to reality? So if you're watching a movie in which you know, like the example I gave, maybe, you know, you mistreat your parents or you mistreat your wife or children, and then you see something dramatic happening, you know, at the back of the end that, oh, these people are paid, they're not real family. So why is it that art, even though, you know, it's not, you know, it's not reality, it's art, it still, you know, brings such an emotional reaction in you?
I think it's because we are people who advertise a lot, especially when it comes to faces, right? When you see actors act, that's why we pay a lot of money for the you know biggest actors, because they're able to convey the deepest, darkest emotions that it's hard for us to convey,
Mhm,
and they're able to do it artificially, or something called method acting, in which,
mhm,
like, Paul Bettany, I was listening to his podcast. Paul Bettany plays Vision, right? And Paul Bettany, he has this movie where there's a scene where he has to cry, right? Like a depressed man. And he said in this podcast that in order to do that, he put his little brother's coat. His little brother died when they were very young. And he put his coat next to that. And during the acting session, he'll just look at the coat and just be like, crying for real. And that's what, that's what art is, right? We see someone
Mm,
crying and we feel like crying as well. And I think that's
mm,
emotions as well. Uh, I think it's also pattern recognition, in which when we see something, it symbolizes something else. Let's say, for example, right? I would go to a certain place, a certain cafe, and I would remember the last time I went there with my ex, and I'm like, oh, I feel something weird about this, and every time I see a certain rock with a certain shape, it gives me a certain kind of feeling.
mm,
I think it's also a mix of facial stuff and pattern recognition stuff. To be honest, I think the pattern recognition stuff and facial recognition stuff, you might say that it's nurture, but you know, I've been observing my niece, right? When my niece was born, I was like, wow, it's a new human being, right? It's a weird thing to say. When when a laptop comes in, right? When your new Mac M1 comes in, you open the box. It's a new M1, right? What can it do? It'll do the previous thing, but faster. You have to install this, you have to install that. But it's so different compared to a new human being. A baby comes out and it's like, it's observing you. And in 1 year, it says whatever you're saying. And you do this and they laugh. Why do they laugh? We do this, we smile and they smile. So it's something like if we do that to cats, right? I'll be going to a cat and be like, woo! They're like, mm. So why do we act like I'll have a baby cat here and I'll have a baby human here, right? And I'll raise them the same way. And one will behave like a cat and one will behave like a human being. Why is that? So
okay,
I think pattern
weirdly
recognition.
enough, I don't know if you chose that example intentionally or intentionally, but cats are said to have the intelligence of a 5-year-old. Cats and dogs are said to
Ah,
have an intelligence level of a 5-year-old human. So I think that's interesting that you're pointing out that even though the intelligence level, and when you say intelligence level in a very psychological manner, you're actually just talking about, oh, they can be programmed to, you know, if you do something, you'll get a treat. If you do something bad, you'll get a punishment or something. So that's like the base level psychological programming that we're talking about. That in that level, it's same. I mean, a psychologist can give a better
huh.
evaluation, but that's how I understand it. And
To be
the second
honest,
thing is, yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea how they measure intelligence in cats. Do they give an IQ test? Meow, meow, meow. I don't know.
I don't know either. That's why I said, that's how I understand it. But maybe a psychologist or somebody in that field, psychiatrist, they can guide it better. My point was, even though they are, similar in other mappings and functions, what you mentioned is really interesting, that the human counterpart of that, that same level of intelligence thing, would show emotions that cats would not. And I mean, biologists and people who understand cats, even, they would disagree, and they would say, oh, they do actually show emotions. They just don't show it in a way human beings do. So we know that cats laugh, cats, get depressed. Even we know that cats, they, to human beings, when a cat slowly blinks at you, it's the cat equivalent of a kiss. So they show affection also when they rub their heads and, in your legs and everything. It's just not the same way as a human being do. But I still believe that the tendency to actually show emotion or get emotion evaluated through art is something only human beings can do. I mean, a cat won't look at a painting and be like, wow. And
Hmm.
even like, I usually, just around this Christmas time, I saw a lot of TikToks about people bringing home gifts for their cats. and they just look at the gifts and they're like, yeah, maybe they'll play around with it or something. I mean, even though if the cat, and the if is a big statement, but if the cat even values the person, the human that feeds him and everything, even then, and maybe it shows his love by purring and snugging, or I don't know, in cat language. But at the end of the day, a cat will not react to getting a present in the same way. So it will only react to its own language. So you give them food, and maybe they have some nerves here, and when you rub their head, they feel good. So they will only react to love in their own language. But human beings, other than our own language, we even react with emotions when exposed to art. So that really brings the question, and that's the main very dramatic metaphoric question about art and life and reality is, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? What do you think?
Does art imitate life? I mean, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Does life imitate life? Okay, if art imitates life, that means here's life. Life is that way. Picasso will be like, oh, wow, I like life. Oh, yeah, here's art. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to copy you, right? But
Okay.
if life imitates art, how does life imitate art? Is it like God? Like God would be like,
I mean, I doubt.
art. Art
I
really
mean,
art.
let's look at it this way, and I'm putting it in a very, very isolated, simplified version. And let's take an example from a sociological perspective. When you say life imitates art or art imitates life, I'm asking that, is it because we watch movies that talk about, you know, maybe love or something? Teenagers read these movies, and then they go to their school and high school, and they're like, oh
Romanticism.
my God, I need a Twilight thing in my life. Is it that? Or is it that, these writers and directors, they have actually experienced these things in their life, and now they are imitating that in art? So is it art imitating life, or is it life imitating art? And now, once again, this is like a very isolated example, and in more general terms it becomes more epistemological. So that becomes complicated. But in this one isolated scenario, it's difficult to say. Maybe it's a circle, it's a cycle, but we don't know which one starts first. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know about those artists. I don't know if uh, J.K. Rowling have felt that, I'm pretty sure she's felt that she's been in school where she's felt like a teenager, where she felt like she's in a group with three other friends and they all love each other and they're fighting, in a competition in Quidditch, and that
I
translates to
haven't
Quidditch.
seen or read Harry Potter, so I have no context whatsoever. But go on.
Quidditch is just their context,
Okay.
because Harry Potter is basically
Magic school or
the
something,
story of
right?
a high school. You go to a cool school, and then there's just magic. Like you're the coolest school that every other school sucks because you have magic, right? And it's so cool because you have like all these powerful spells.
Yeah, I mean,
So
so now you see that these are scenarios that almost all teenagers would have experienced.
yes,
So
so I think
now this person, J.K. Rowling, she experienced this, but now she's a highly imaginative, highly creative person. So she added a lot of exaggeration into it. So it's I think
yes.
it's overlapping layers of art imitating life, and then life imitating art, back and forth.
No, I think it's basically the book imitates life, her life. She's experienced that. She wants to translate it on paper. She wants to translate it in book.
Mhm.
So a good counter to this is, can a 5-year-old write what living like a 65-year-old happen? Like my life, life of a 65-year-old according to a 5-year-old. can
Mhm.
can a 5-year-old do that?
You know, in
Maybe she.
in
Yeah.
in philosophy, that's called pre-ostic arguments that are either analytic or systematic. And that's a topic that is extremely complicated and extremely difficult. I'm not side railing you, but I will be doing a proper episode on that. That will be the criticism to Kant's critique of pure reason, that discusses about, can we actually perceive knowledge without actually experiencing it? So that's a
I think
really
that
interesting and really difficult topic. So it just reminded me, but go ahead.
that's very interesting. But we talked about psychology, right? We talked about you said sociology, we talked about biology, and now we talk about philosophy, and all these topics about these fields, right? Let me to think about UBD. By the way, my cat is meowing right outside my door. Can you, if you can't hear that, that should be okay, right? If you
We can
hear a
hear.
meow, let me. You can
Yeah,
hear the meow.
yeah, we're okay with hearing the meow. Let the cat in.
Okay, let that. No, because it's raining outside, so we're just like letting the cat roam inside. So, anyways, what happened was I was in UBD, right? I was a UBD University Brunei Darussalam student, and I was wondering, why are the degrees, why are these programs categorized in such a way that I was taking biomedical sciences, and it was under Faculty of Health Sciences. My friend was taking biology. It was under Faculty of Science. My other friend was taking geology. It was under the Faculty of Science. My other friend was taking geography. It's under the Faculty of Arts. Why is that? Why is that? So what makes something goes to science and something goes to art? I think for geography, right, they're talking about people. Geography of people in here. Geography. I'm pretty sure the people who are listening to this, who took these degrees, let me know if I'm wrong, because from my experience, people who are from Faculty of Arts, they're usually very opinionated, and they have Twitter accounts. So guys, just correct me, okay? I'll trigger some of you, okay? But so what makes something science, what makes something an art? And here's an interesting thing. I was talking to my friend, and she said in her essay that as part of her assignment, she wrote a poem. She wrote a poem. And I was so shocked. I was like, are you kidding me? If I wrote a poem in my science thesis and my science report, that's a fail straight away. No one puts a poem in a science report, okay? And she said, I wrote a poem about, belonging, and I got an A star. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So it's like, why is that accepted? I don't know. So I think science is based on facts. Science is based on, here's my research, here's my conclusion, here's my answer, here's my evidence, blah 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 blah. And art is like, how do you express this feeling? What do I feel? How do I put this feeling on paper? And maybe the academic professor who's reading it, who's marking her, she's like, oh wow, I feel it too. Wow, this is so profound. Again, I'm not making fun of arts people. I'm just trying to understand it. It's just like, okay, this feeling. Oh yeah, A star for you. You hit the right spot in my feeling. Right spot here in my feeling.
I think you're right on track in defining why is it called arts. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know if epistemologically or endometologically the term art, they say faculty of art. I don't know if that's the same art or they use it in other contexts. I don't know. But here's the thing. From what I know, and I could be wrong, and once again, if somebody from academics knows a more clear view on it, they can correct me. But what I know is that the faculty of arts, or generally arts, what this discipline, what is this interchangeable? What is another interchangeable name for this, for arts? There's another name, humanities. And
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
so
yeah.
once again, it could be a sub-subject. You say social sciences, but what really covers art is humanities. And I think it connects exactly. I think I love how it has, the conversation has come a full loop, exactly because these are the things. So you're talking about belonging. So belonging is such an, emotional concept that you cannot scientifically quantify it. It is qualitative in nature. So you have to, you have to somehow analyze the emotions of the people who are, for example, away from. So like diaspora studies is a huge field in that faculty. So people who are away from the homeland and their culture, and so there is no scientific evidence, right? There is no scientific, what are you going to do about it? There's no scientific to go anywhere. But there is a feeling that you are zooming in on, that you're trying to capture the feeling, the emotions of the people. So I think, because of how, how we, in the beginning we said art and emotions cannot be separated, because art, exact what art does, it art pushes emotions. So I think somehow, somewhere, art and emotion became interchangeable. So I think one of the reason why that might be called arts is because it deals with things that are to do with emotion. So humanities studies, so we discuss about the people, their nature. Sociology talks about a lot of factors about how people are, how their nature is. Archaeology talks about how the people have been. So I think it all connects back to that, because they consider emotions as a very important factor. And once again, this is a hypothesis. So I don't know if that is the real reason why it's called arts, but that's what I think it is.
When you're talking about that, I can't help but think, right? What we're trying to do here in this podcast is that we're trying to take a metaphorical hammer, right? And we're
Mhm.
just trying to break down big topics into small chunks, just breaking it
Yeah.
down into trying to break it down into fundamentals until it doesn't like so we know what something is. If something is
Mhm.
complex, we'll break it down until it
Yeah.
becomes small. If it's still complex, we break it down, right? And for the topic of art, right, we're trying to break down what art is, and we're trying to do it in different ways, in different angles. And one thing to consider is this: I think some part of it lies in intention of understanding.
Mhm.
What do I mean? Let's say the weather is, let's say the weather is rainy, right? Is there meaning behind it? Is there meaning behind your daily lives? A scientist would say, like, okay, here's the weather. There's no meaning behind it. That's just how it is. But art, maybe similar to religion, is also like, okay, maybe a rainy weather means that we're in bad luck. A black cat means bad luck. Uh, and I think that also translates to the personalities of people who rely on art. Let me explain. So honestly, I'm born as a scientist. I don't know why, but I'm fine tuned to think scientifically. I grew up and I'm fascinated with science books. Basically a nerd. Okay, I'm a nerd. Okay, full stop. I'm a nerd. And there are some people who are artists. They grow up and they wear these shirts. They try to look cool. They try to express themselves, in their own way. I don't know why I'm moving like this, like zigzag, but you can tell that. And when I meet these friends, I'm surprised at how, sort of say, their thinking is unscientific. They the emotions are really important. They're more emotionally oriented. I'm more logically oriented. Um, this might offend some people, as
We are
some
way
people that we
beyond
both
that.
know. Okay, all right. Let's just offend, right?
Okay.
Horoscopes or zodiacs or something, right? We're like, what does it mean?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna give you these cards, okay? Not to offend, okay? Just don't be offended, please.
Oh,
I'm
the
just
damage
example,
has been
okay?
done.
But cards, do they actually have meaning? Do they actually have meaning? Now, if I were to ask an emotionally oriented person, oh, these cards, yeah, you're right. It has to have a meaning. Yeah. This is my sign to do what I want. This is my sign to confess to my crush, you know. But if you were to deal those cards in front of me, I'd be like, okay, what are the chances of these being right? You know, my brain goes into scientist mode. Are all these statements general statements so that everyone who takes them feel that it involves them? What is the success rate? Actually, let's make it a scientific experiment. Everyone, let's all do the test. And in 1 year time, let's list all the predictions down. And in 1 year time, let's all come back and calculate the rate of success of all these predictions. And if the rate of success is less than 50%, that means it's really bad, right? 50% is 50-50, you know, all the, I'm calculating all the probability and all the calculations, right? So, but if I were to explain this to an artistically oriented person, they'll be like, they'll be a bit disturbed, to be honest. They'll be like, something about that. It's like, I don't know. It's like, Nabil, why are you being so nerdy? But I can't help it. It's just the way they see things. They see it and it resonates with them, and it's enough.
I think
Similar to how,
in a very sciences manner, we differentiate between these two as qualitative and quantitative, right? There are things that are quantitative. You can measure them with results in charts. But then there are things that are qualitative. Now, I'm not personally somebody who believes in horoscopes or things like that, right? And actually, like, I do not. Why are you so surprised?
Well, I'm surprised.
But here's the thing, you know. But as a philosopher whose my main area remains, you know, society, as you know, sociology, as you know, as people. So I can't help, and this is something that I've come up with. So my philosophy is known as what I would like for it to be known as is consideration philosophy. So rather than dissecting things, because you know we human beings, we are complicated creatures and we create complicated societies. So when you dissect things into such manners that you know they're isolated and you read them in isolated manners, obviously they don't make sense. But when you see them as a whole, they try to make more sense. Now, this is not my personal view, but this is how I think a philosopher's brain would dissect it. And just for the sake of conversation, let's put all superstitions in one category, right? Cards, beliefs, everything, you know. Let's, you know, put prayers and stuff also, you know, people pray for rain or whatever. Let's put, you know, just for the sake of conversation, let's put it in one category. And if I were to actually be very, you know, so like you were mentioning, you know, we can do a scientific experiment about it, and we can see does it work or not. I think that's a very limited scope of how human brain works, because just scientifically speaking, are you considering the placebo effect? Are you considering the self-initiative concepts? You know, are you considering the tri-spirit concept? So there is so much about, you know, and you know, if you actually dig into, with if you meet somebody who's like who believes in this stuff, you know, horoscope and stuff, but they're also a rational person, and you actually break them down, they will come down to this point. They're like, okay, I know these are not, you know, astronomically accurate, but you know, if somebody is going through something and I tell them, oh, good time is coming for you, it helps them motivate. So you know, something along the line of that. Once again, human beings are so motivated by emotion that, you know, and I think for me, in a poetic sense, it's all coming together that this is the boundary at which is art imitating life or is life imitating art is blurred, because certainly none of that is happening. You know, that art of, let's say, you know, reading stars, that art has nothing to do with practical life, you know, speaking scientifically, it has nothing to do with that. So neither is art imitating life, nor is life imitating art. But somehow, because in between there is an emotional connection, so you know, human beings believe in it. So maybe there is placebo, maybe there is the idea of self-initiative. So somebody wants to apply for a job, and you know, they're just depressed, they don't want to get out of the room, and somebody hands them a card and say, you know, this is going to be your year, man. 2022, it's for you. So maybe, it will kick in them what they needed. So is it rationally correct? Obviously not. But do I support it? Obviously not. Is this a proper, is this, a very, is this a very good way to live life by? Obviously not. But just because I want to consider art as something that correlates with human emotions on a very personal level, I believe I would consider this as an art. That is, let's, if you want to use a negative word, you can use manipulate. This is an art that manipulates human emotions, or at least it taps into it. So I think, it comes back to the idea that somehow art is so directly linked to emotion that it does not even matter if that art is scientifically uh, you know scientifically provable or not. And that's, at the end of the day, that's why it's art. It's not under FAS, it's a faculty of science, it's under faculty of arts, because maybe it does not have to be scientifically quantified.
Exactly, exactly. It's enough. I don't know. I think it's. I mean, we can talk about it in another topic about the division about people. There's some people who are scientifically oriented. There's some people who are arts
Mhm, mhm.
oriented. It doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be good enough, or it just caters to my emotion,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
has
yeah.
its, by the way, because I grew up with emails of fake news, and the only reason why this fake news is because people that have critical thinking skills,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
just follow the emotion. So that's why I'm so, like, please, no one can scam me. I'm so scientific, you cannot scam me with emotions, because you don't have it's only when you're too emotional, you don't have control, you don't know what's real and what's wrong. You read the news and you read the fake news and you feel so triggered by it, and so you go along with it, so people can manipulate you, right? So that's why I'm so scientifically,
I
you know
used to be exactly like that, so extremely rational that emotions, they did not exist. And maybe personally they still don't, but in I mean, I'm not somebody who would consider emotions for my personal life.
yeah.
That's just how my brain works. I keep on rationalizing things. But when I look at society, and reading history has helped me a lot. So I'm a bit off topic, but I'm sharing a personal insight. Reading history has
Mm-hmm.
helped me understand, rather prove this, that human beings are very less, I would say some 20-30% of them are scientifically motivated. A majority of them is emotionally
Mm,
motivated. So this is a story, this is a tale. I don't know, you cannot find them in authentic historical books, but it's a tale.
mm,
So when Genghis Khan died, so when he was on his
mm,
deathbed, so the
mm.
sons of Genghis Khan, which were by tons, they gathered around and they asked him that, uh, you know because there were some gods, that gods or souls, or some spiritual entities that Genghis Khan communicated with,
Mm,
apparently. And he used to tell them that, oh, we are invading these lands in name of these holy spirits, and these holy spirits are telling me to go there, and this and that. So the sons then asked, teach us the way to connect to these holy spirits after you. And you know what he said? Because when you're in your last moments, your last breath, you have zero tolerance for bullshit. You sorry, you might
mm,
have been
mm.
coping with it your entire life, but in your last
Okay.
moments you cannot do that. So Genghis, he exploded, and he said, what the hell, there are no spirits, I just made up the entire story to motivate. And that was, now this is a tale, but this idea, you would find it in the art of war also, in several strategical military warfares. How they train, or I would say how they program a task force. So Genghis is rumored to have said, or maybe it's some other leader, but it's a very powerful saying, that money and women, these are the normal, in those days, that were the currencies, or what you could motivate a man with. So it's either gold or women, right? So you can promise somebody gold, or you can promise somebody women, and they will fight for you. But in the last moment, when they are, maybe they're, there's a sword on their neck, they'll be like, okay, this woman or this money is not worth my life. So I am out. So something about the last level of, the extreme level of motivation, only emotion can give. Rationally, you cannot, no matter how much money somebody's giving you, you cannot rationally justify it by saying that, okay, I will sacrifice my life for this unconditionally and go through all those troubles that people usually do in those scenarios. So what is the only way to actually let people sacrifice their lives is you give them an idea that is so abstract that it deals with their emotions and not with their rational counterparts. So I think
Exactly.
something, it comes back to how, I mean, now the word art is so broad, but something about how emotions are what we are, led by rather than
Yes.
rationality.
Actually, I think that's true. In fact, even myself, right? I'm a super logical human being. If something happens to me, immediately like, what's going on? What's going on? But to be honest, I make emotional decisions. When I see an Apple advertisement, I'm just like so hypnotized. I'm like, I'm gonna buy everything. I'm gonna buy everything, right? I'm gonna buy everything that Apple has. Don't care. But I'm a logical being. I don't know why. I think when we evaluate speeches, right, presentations, the best form of the best way I evaluate it is this: I will be sitting down, and someone will be speaking in front of me. Again, public speaking, presentation. This is an art, right? We have guidelines. We have guidelines on vocal variety, structure, whatever. But it all boils down to this: when you're listening to this speech, number one, what do you feel? What do you feel? And then the second part is, why do you feel that way? Okay, I think I feel that it's kind of boring, is because, to be honest, there's no vocal variety. He's being monotonous. There's no interesting story. Okay, fine. What could he have done to make it better? Right. So I'm
Mhm.
experimenting, right? Okay. So there's all these things that are on the chart of, in speeches, vocal variety, structure, all that stuff that he can try out. But in the end, it's still guidelines. In the end, the final result has to be, like some combination of that, some combination of that. We don't know the exact ratio. I don't know. Maybe in the future
Mhm.
we'll develop an AI so powerful that it can calculate all these different ratios in all the best speeches in the past and calculate the best, AI catered, you know, speech. I don't know. Maybe that'll
Howard does
happen.
that for their essays.
Howard, who's that?
They do that for their essays.
Harvard.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the essays they use an AI that compares their quality to the previous, all the stored database of essays. Random information you didn't ask for.
well, and what did they find?
That the quality is progressively going down.
Is it?
Yeah, the
But
quality
I
is,
don't.
yeah.
How,
That's
how do
how,
you how do you
I
calculate
don't know
it?
if you have this in Brunei, but the British system is what they call a cumulative grade. So it's not just your grade out of 100. So they take in, so it's not an average, it's a cumulative graph of the entire class or everybody who gave that exam.
Yeah, bell
And,
curve, bell curve. Yep.
yeah. So, yeah, the bell curve, the normal distributions. And according to
Yep.
that, they decide the grades. So, it just clicked me that, oh, that's the AI collecting all the previous databases. But go on.
But speaking of that, right? There's a term that we use in business, and it's this: pricing is an art. Pricing is art. Like, like we have a lot of clients, right? Our company, and sometimes the pricing is more expensive for one company. Sometimes it's less expensive, and one of the like we spend a lot of time making sure that our modules are easy to understand, that easily digestible and useful. But we spend an awful lot of time actually trying to figure out how to charge the client, how to price the client. And one of the things that my old boss used to say is, the price is an art. You don't, you know you can't rationalize it. You can't like fully rationalize 1 hour equals to how many hours? 1 hour is equal to how many dollars? It's so it's so complicated. So in the end, the best way to gauge pricing is this. It's this price because it feels right. It's this price because it feels right. We can put in another layer on that by saying, okay, I put it at this price because I did some calculation because it's this, and then I did, we did this for some other people, but in the end, this price feels right. And that's the best gauge.
Okay,
So I think it's just,
I completely agree where you're coming from, but maybe just my insight, because I spent a few years in wholesale industry, and maybe you're missing one key idea here. It's not always about feels right. It's more like how will the customer feel which price is right. So, one of the techniques is
Hmm.
that, you tell the customer that, hey, if you buy this one, it's for $10, but if you buy three, you are a loyal customer, so we're giving you discount. So, for me, what the way I can make sense of this is, whenever you say something is an art, or is this an art, the definition is that, is this thing able to play with the emotions of the audience? So, I think we attended once, I don't know if you were there or not. We attended once a lecture, a public speech about I forgot the name, but there is a technique in business. What they do is they give you three options. So the first one,
Yes, the
yeah,
decoy. Yeah.
the decoy technique. So the first one will be like $5.99, but the second one will be like $6.99, and the third one will actually be like $7.20, not $7.99. So you'll be like, oh, just 30 cents difference between second and third, but you don't even need the third one. You need maybe the second one at best, or if not the first one. So you're playing with the emotions of the audience that, hey, you can get a better price if you buy a bigger one. So I think whenever we say that this something is an art, it gets down like how deep can it get under your skin? How much can it play with your emotions? Fun fact, this is exactly why, now this might come as a surprise to many, but this is exactly why Plato hated art. Did you know about that?
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Plato
Wow.
hated art, and he gave me, so Plato has this three-part soul idea. So Plato says that our I don't know, the soul is a very loose word, but our existence is made of three main sources, that are the centers. So this is the brain, which is rationality, which is there's the heart, which is the feelings, but then there's the stomach area, which is the desires, food and etc. So these are three things. So it depends on you which one you follow. And I love this idea so much because it translates, and for centuries, into doctrinal theologies also about human being a split of divine and human. But anyways, not segueing, the idea Plato introduces here is that your rational part must always be in control. So you should not let the emotional part or the stomach part, the animal part, decide for you. So somebody offers you a plate of some really tasty food. Yeah.
Let me come to that. Someone before this video, you were undecided between Skype and Zoom.
Yeah, okay. Now
What
here's the thing.
side? What did you say? Okay.
So, we were comparing, okay, should I go with Skype and Zoom? And I'm listing out features, and Skype won in terms of, quantitative features. I was like, okay, the aspect ratio is better and the resolution is same, so it's a plus. But at the very last moment, I'm like, no, my gut feeling is like Zoom. So I went back with Zoom. We are not sponsored by Zoom. I wish, but my gut feeling.
So you did all that analysis. You did all that with your brain, and then in the end, you're like, screw everything. I'm gonna go with my gut.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. Human beings, we are really complicated creatures. Sometimes we listen to the brain. Sometimes the heart takes over. Sometimes the gut takes over. So if somebody offers you, like, maybe money or something, maybe food, and I'm giving food example because Plato symbolizes stomach as the desirable area where all the desires come from. And he's like, just eat this really tasty nasi katuk or nasi goreng, this really tasty kawetiao, and just do this thing for me, and that thing is immoral or unethical. So now you
Mm,
have a choice to choose between, should I let the desire, the human desire, the animal desire win, or the rational part win? So similarly, your gut feeling is saying, your heart is saying something, but the rational calculations are saying no. So Plato
mm,
argues, he says that always let the rational part win. So that's why he hated art, because he basically understood art as like, really mischievous play on your emotions that tries to get under your skin and
mm,
manipulate your emotions. So he hated art. Weirdly enough,
mm.
now I'm sidetracking into like literature or philosophy, but
Yeah. Okay.
weirdly
Okay.
enough, Aristotle, the disciple of Plato, he said no, art is an extremely important part, because human beings are not, I'm not translating for modern language, but it was the genius of Socrates that he was, Aristotle, not Socrates. Socrates was Plato's
Mm.
teacher. So Plato and Plato's disciple Aristotle. So Aristotle said that in reality we are not supposed to just let one win. It's actually supposed to be a balance of, your heart feeling, your rationality. It's supposed to be a balance, and then he goes into detail about what exactly that balance is supposed to be. But the idea being that sometimes, even when your brain is telling you that, Apple is just, mugging you guys with a really expensive, with a $20 polishing cloth, sometimes you should just, maybe sometimes you should just let your heart feeling win and be like, I need this goddamn piece of cloth for $20,
Oh,
and just buy it. So maybe that's what I understand from this dialogue between Plato and
I
Aristotle.
need those $400 Mac Pro wheels.
900, 900.
900. Oh my god.
Yeah, get your prices right. That's an aluminium coated wheel, bro.
Oh,
So you see,
I'm
when you
sorry.
see like Apple ads, they're like, it will be a 10-year-old technology, and they're like the first ever in the world, and with some sound effects and really amazing 3D graphics. And you're like, yeah, I want this. So something about that art, in the end of the day, plays with your emotions, and sometimes even makes you do things that the rational part obviously knows is wrong.
It can be evil because it can, like for example, right? It can inspire to be like, look at these hungry children. We have to feed the hungry children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or it can, like, um, I know you don't like me quoting atheists, but Stephen Fry, okay, he's a linguist. He talks about like the role of language in Nazi Germany, how it impacted. And he one of the things that I was listening to his talk, and he said, how can the Nazis be so evil? Because if you take the diary of a regular Nazi, I'm not sure if I explained to this in the podcast. What happened was, he talked about the diary of a regular Nazi, and the regular Nazi is just like, uh, writing a letter to his wife, and the letter is saying, like, I hope old Timmy is, this old boy is doing his homework and brushing his teeth. If not, I will screw him up. Yeah, I will, like, put a, like, hit him or something. I don't know, like a regular person. Oh, by the way, work today was actually quite good. You managed to process some 400 people, and they were a bit resistant, but they were processed, so that's good for him. So see you tomorrow. So they're just talking like regular people, but that the 400 people are basically like Jews in the Holocaust getting gassed to death, and they're just talking to them like they're bugs. But that's exactly where the problem lies in. When they refer to the Jews, they refer to them as these not human beings, less than human beings. They're on the level of bugs. They use words like, as in pests, the same words that Hitler. Fun fact: before he was, I think after he got rejected from art school or whatever, right? He ran this entrepreneurial business where he went around houses of of hygiene cleaning services or something. He would go to people's houses and he would disinfect with all these, like disinfect these pests, and he would soon use the same chemicals to kill the Jews, and he would use the same words to describe pests to Jews, and
Did
it's
you know
that
that?
change of languaging. Yeah.
Did you know that the reason Hitler chose that profession was because he had OCD?
Oh, yeah, yeah. He's high in conscientiousness. He's very tidy guy. Very
He's,
tidy guy.
he used to bath like 5 times a day.
Oh, okay. Wow. I didn't. I didn't
So
know that.
yeah, so a lot of ideas, what he manifested over the society actually root from his personal life. We see that, you know, and I think yeah,
Mm,
that's I think this connects back to the point that sometimes we
mm,
need art in life. So maybe I remember there's an account. So I read this. I think I saw this on YouTube or something. There was an account of some writer that was the first ever work introduced to the newly made Americans, which were basically Britishers, but to them that basically told a story about these Native Americans, and so it's a novel, it's a work of art. So it talks about the daily lives of these Native American people who were otherwise slaves, and that work shows that how these are also common normal human beings and not things or objects. So that was the first ever movement you see in the Americans, that uh, you know like obviously it took several further moments, but that was the first ever time you see that in historical terminologies, that a sense of like, oh, maybe these are not slaves, these are not objects, we should treat them like human beings, was ever risen. So art is behind
mm.
it. So an art was created that was targeted to push the emotions in the white Americans, to motivate them, to make them understand that these people are also human beings. So I think it connects back to the point that art helps us in society by actually triggering those emotions.
But art also does not help us. Going back to the Nazi point and going back to the slavery point. They described these poor Africans as they're monkeys. They're meant to be slaves. I think they're more artsy words that they use, but I think art goes both ways. It can be good, it can be bad. It just depends on the
True,
intention.
true. So
And I
I think,
think
yeah, yeah,
hmm,
we can
moving forward,
basically
right? I
see,
think this is one of the things that I want to, maybe this will be a future podcast, but the value of truth, the value of critical thinking. I mean, in the end, right? In the end, we want a better world where everyone can contribute and everyone will get a bigger slice of the pie in the future, right? We want economic growth, we want all that good stuff. But how is truth valued? And do people want the truth, or do people just want to fulfill
Mm,
the emotions? uh, we have one aspect where people are too scientific. They build atomic bombs, and then they bomb people, but where's the morality in that? And we have the other side, which is very emotional, but they're also like the Ku Klux Klan. They're very emotional, so what makes them right? So okay, so where is the truth then? How do people value, how do people see the truth? Like I just have this thought that what is one piece of knowledge that if everyone understands, the world will be a better place? Is it art? Is it science? Is it a bit of both? What is truth? How do we know if something is true? And I think that's very interesting because I did some research on it, and there's this philosophy forum where they try to list down what is truth. Truth is
mhm.
something that is repeatable. Truth is something that can not be broken down further. There's all these things, and I think that's very interesting because we're talking about art. We're trying to talk about what is not art, which is like, okay, maybe in the field of logic or something, and we try to identify what is the significance of art, which leads us to finding out what is what is true and what is not true. So I think in future podcasts, like I don't know, the philosophy of truth. Maybe there's, Plato or Socrates or Aristotle or Tatotatetes. I don't know. Maybe they said something about it. I don't know, but something about truth. That'll be interesting to find
Oh,
out.
they have plenty to say about it. I mean, for now, what I understand, especially in this, so when we're trying to make, so like you mentioned earlier, what we're doing, we're just hammering down all the arguments that we have, but at the end, we have to somehow coherently and semantically align them also. So which one comes first and which one comes after? And I think my perspective, my understanding as far as today is that both science and uh, superstition or art or emotion, both rational and emotional parts, these are basically weapons. These are not truth. Both of them are not truth. These are basically, I'm using the word weapon in a very neutral sense. These are basically really, really
Yes,
powerful, really, really
it can go
powerful
both
weapons.
sides. Mm,
Yeah. So like, there's this very common misconception that I really want to dig into, that science is the upper hand because it's not motivated, because that's how we see that, oh,
mm,
emotion, you can feel whatever, science proves it. But there are countless times where we have seen academics bias in sciences. There are countless numerous times where we have seen science just blatantly being wrong. So I see both science and emotion, logic, rationality, and emotion as mere tools to understand the universe and the world. And they both have their
mm,
positives and negatives. And as we were talking about, art is sometimes used to invoke negative emotions. I think science is doing that too. You know, academics bias and putting out maybe only that, or putting out the research in a way that only suits their propagandas. That's not something very new. We have seen that happen many times over in the past few, I would say, decades only. So I think both science and emotion are tools that humanity can use to further their agendas and propagandas, whether it be positive or negative is completely neutral from that. Now, is what is truth and what is the definition of truth? I think it all comes down to the idea of morality. And morality is something that I want to dig into for several weeks now. And I think it will be a very extensive podcast because it's a huge topic. Maybe it will last more than couple of hours. Maybe I will invite more guests. So I think when we discuss morality in like complete detail, that's that's where we can discuss the idea of what truth is, what defines truth. And there's all these ideas about truth. But for art, I think what we understand right now is that it's basically a tool that
yeah.
really is able to manipulate your emotions. And I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Yep. I agree with you. It's like science. I mean, we're human beings. We're born with confusion. Everyone is born with confusion because we don't have all the answers. And to find the answers, we need to observe. And what we notice are patterns. And from those patterns, we try to identify the meaning and try to satisfy our confusion. Like, okay, so far, what I've been saying, human beings are born without the answers and trying to navigate the truth, and they're trying to find meaning behind it. Every single human being follows this pattern, right? So far, there's no diversion, like 100%, right? How they find the answer, then human beings start to divide. Some of them are like, oh, it repeats in a certain form. It's scientific. Then this must be the truth. Some people like, it
Mhm.
satisfies my feelings. This is the moment where human beings. So I think the more we discuss with different people, from different fields, from arts,
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
religious background, from also, then we start to identify, where is the point where we differ. I think ultimately, like, that is how we come closer to the truth of answer. I
You know,
know, I
I
know you
really
have.
like that. I really like that, how you emphasize on the need of actually understanding how many different fields philosophy overlaps with. So it's not just one very precise subject. It overlaps with a lot of fields. And a lot of subjects, like morality, for example, they cannot be discussed with philosophical lens alone. So like even now when we're discussing very naive topics, we have to go through, at least sociology, humanities, and history. So when we have to discuss something as dense as morality, I think theology and doctrine and all these concepts that are really the foundational stones of the humanities wisdom will obviously play a role into it.
Definitely. I think the best people to ask that are people with a lot of life experience, or the people who have read a lot, or some sort of protege, or someone who have a combination of all three criteria. Okay, so that'll be interesting. Uh, interesting
Yeah.
discussion about, because I think if we talk about the topic of morality, right, or basically philosophy, right, it feeds on examples, right? So if you
Mhm.
can't feed it examples, it'll just be a dog without a bone, an empty dog. Like, I think that'll be very interesting to talk about. I know you have something in your pockets about relative truth, some type
Oh
of truth.
yeah.
I'll be interested. I haven't explored that topic myself.
You
I
should read my
think
article. See,
so.
that is exactly why I'm doing podcasts, because every time I'm like, read my book, read my article, people are like, too much reading. So I'm like, fine, I'll give you a YouTube link. And I think that's actually something I should add on. That what I should do is basically all those topics that I've written already in my books, in my articles, we should just, bring them to podcasts and we can discuss them, have an outer perspective, and that would be interesting. So
You
relative
should.
truth, yeah, that's
You know why? Because I don't advocate texting while driving, reading while driving, but you can podcast while driving. So it's a safer option. So come on,
I know, right?
why
That's
not?
one
Why
field I
not?
did not venture into. It was only after I think MKBHD started doing podcasts. So I would just listen to the podcast and I'll be cooking or doing something. And I'll be like, okay, this is good, this is much more
Definitely.
effective than reading in other forms. So I think yes, that is something that is in the oven, and we will see how far we can get with all these other concepts of morality and relative truth. These are really interesting concepts. I will be my idea for them, and I'm just giving an insight for viewers for what to expect further. It might be some topics, because some topics they last so extensive details that we might either break them down over several episodes, or we might do an extra video, maybe a YouTube video, because at times a lot of visual aid is required. So the way I actually go through really complicated topics is I stick to texts. So I'll be, talking about texts, that, okay, this is the book that we'll be going through. So I think it helps to do a proper dedicated video, maybe, it can
Oh.
last several hours, or maybe break down into parts, and, a lot of visual aid and stuff can help. But I think that's something we can venture into. But in this,
Text? WhatsApp text? I thought it's
sorry,
WhatsApp text, no?
what?
When you say text, it's not WhatsApp text.
No, no, not WhatsApp text. Textbooks, I meant
Oh,
like academic books, like,
oh.
why would I be referring
Dude,
to WhatsApp text?
why why are you not wearing spectacles? You're obviously a huge nerd.
Oh, because I
You
use the
should be
blue
wearing
light
those.
filter on the.
Oh, okay. What a
I'm a
nerd.
nerd and
Okay,
a geek at
go
the
on.
same time, so it cancels out.
Uh,
But
okay,
yes,
go on.
thank you so
Uh,
much, Bill. We had a really, really interesting and detailed rundown about art. I think I'm pretty sure we offended a lot of people in this video.
sorry.
But I think
But
that, like
in order
Plato
to
said,
pursue the truth,
like Plato said, nobody's hated more than the one who speaks the truth. So that's one
all
of the
right.
burdens of philosophy.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, put that on your WhatsApp status. So
I'll
okay, but
offend people. I'll offend a million people to get to the truth. Okay. I'll offend every. Okay. I'm digging my own grave.
all right, Bill, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, viewers and listeners. We will be back next week with more brain drenching intellectual topics, hopefully. And once again, thank you for listening. Thank you, Bill, for joining. And that will be it. Thank you.